So, a very good morning to all our viewers who are based in the Pacific time zone, and good evening to all our viewers who are in the Asian time zone. Today, we have with us a very interesting guest. He is a serial entrepreneur as well as he has 24 US patents under his name. He has built two very innovative companies, Zya and Widevine, and exited at $1 billion, sold off to Google. He has been continuously working to advocate for democratizing technology for human empowerment and more responsible future. Presently, he is leading and founder and chair of Kwaai, which is a not-for-profit AI lab and developer community advancing open, ethical, and privacy-preserving personal AI that individuals can own and control. Let us all welcome Mr. Reza Rassool.
Well, thank you so much, Harsha. Thank you, and thanks to your audience. I'm glad to be here.
I saw you speaking at the panel in Santa Monica, and I was very impressed with the facts that you stated. So, I would like to understand more about how you have built a remarkable career across AI, digital media, patents, and technology ventures. What were the defining moments that shaped your career and a journey as a founder?
Well, I think it was luck. Some people attribute their success to their own brilliance, but I think I was just in the right place at the right time in a lot of occasions. Let's see, my journey started. I was in Cape Town in South Africa. That's where I was born. And my parents took a big gamble and exited the country. This was in the early 70s when my dad was a member of the teachers union and also um, I guess a party, the Unity Movement, which was an anti-apartheid movement, and those organizations were banned under the apartheid government of South Africa. So I don't think anyone who was comes from that period is not somehow influenced very um, definitively by those roots. But by the age of 8, I was in London, and you can tell from my accent I've retained the UK accent. But all my schooling was in the UK, elementary level schooling, high schooling, university, and even started a family. I'm married and started a family in the UK, but I've been in Los Angeles for over 30 years. Um, the uh, the innovation that brought me over to Los Angeles was in the area of video editing. It was one of the world's first systems that allowed you to edit a feature-length film on a computer. And now that's commonplace. That's now a utility you get with every laptop you buy. So, but in those days, it was a transformative technology that transformed this town where I live now, Los Angeles, and the entire industry moved from celluloid through videotape to digital a digital pipeline right throughout the stack from contribution through post-production right through distribution and streaming. And my career followed that path all the way along. And because I was in the right place at the right time, I was doing this when very few other people were doing it, and I was fortunate to be included in some innovative teams. I had the choice of the cool technologies to work on in the Los Angeles region. I worked on the cochlear implant for advanced bionics. I was an audio DSP engineer for them, and then I worked on the bionic eye for Second Sight, and then fell in with a group of developers in Seattle, and we worked on encrypting TV streaming. And now that technology, what was acquired by Google, and is now the technology that secures maybe 40% of the world's internet streaming. So I've been really lucky to have been in the right place at the right time. I capped my career with a tour of duty at RealNetworks as the Chief Technology Officer. I helped them pivot from streaming media to AI. And when I left there, I retired in 2023. I left with an angst that AI is heading in a dangerous direction, and I need to do something about it. And so I formed this community called Kwaai, Kwaai. It's actually a word that comes from South Africa. It means cool. The literal translation is angry and wild, but it's got a hip hop connotation to it. And the movement's mission is to make AI safer, faster, and greener. And we now have over 1,000 volunteers who are researching and developing open source AI. We think we can do better than the current versions of AI. So that's my whole arc in a short time space there.
Mm. That's very impressive, and thank you for taking us through the entire journey. I really appreciate it. Now, Kwaai is positioned around democratizing AI and building personal, decentralized, open source AI. What inspired you to do so, and what problem are you trying to solve in the current AI system?
Well, the inspiration obviously, is ingrained in me and my family and the shoulders upon which I stand. So, I come from a long line of troublemakers. Um, Even if you take the family's history back before I was born, before my father was born, in the era of my great grandfather who settled in South Africa. I wonder if you recall in your history which famous character was also in South Africa, 1893 to 1914. My great grandfather was one of those merchants that gained tremendous wealth in the Cape in the turn of the sort of late 1800s, turn of the 1900s, and they needed an attorney who spoke Gujarati and who was licensed to practice British law. And one character answered the ad in the London Times, and it was Mohandas K. Gandhi. And he came to South Africa to work for this group of merchants. And when Gandhi was in South Africa, when he was in Cape Town, he stayed at our family's home. And many of the letters that are in the National Gandhi Archive bear the letterhead and the address of our family home. So I come from a tradition of troublemakers, and so I can't let that tradition down. And so that's ingrained in me. Whatever I do, I will be um, vocally subversive. Okay, so uh, the other part of the question is what problem am I solving? Well, let's look at the problems of AI. The problems are threefold. Um, Most people try and tackle AI safety, and they tackle the outputs of AI. Is it giving biased results? Is it hallucinating? Um, uh, is it misaligned? I think those are great problems to solve. We're solving the problems on the input of AI. What's going into AI? Um, there is a tremendous wealth extraction that's going on as AI is running, not even during its training phase. Yes, during its training phase, there's an extraction of wealth where data has been taken from us. The collective treasury of data has been taken from us and has gone to become the property of maybe a half a dozen oligarchs that control AI. And so that's one issue. But even during inference, every prompt that you send up to ChatGPT, that data now belongs to them. That's what it says in the small print. They're free to train models on it. They're free to resell the data. They're free to extract insights from it to target their ad engines to spam you with products they think you might want. Okay, so that's safety. We want to make sure that when you engage with AI, that the data you send is encrypted. Not encrypted in a way where you have to give them the decryption key and then they've got access to it in the clear. No, in a way where AI can operate on it in its encrypted state and you're just paying for their infrastructure rather than inadvertently handing over your intellectual property, your private data, and doing that without any recompense. Okay, so that class of technology is called homomorphic encryption, and we're working on that. Okay, so that's the safer part. Safer, faster, and greener. Faster. Well, if we can make AI run faster, it can run at home. It can run on our computers. It'll be more efficient. And it means that we don't have to forever be renting access to our own data in somebody else's cloud. We can run it locally. And so we're working on technologies in the area of sub-quadratic neural networks that don't scale quadratically, so they're sub-quadratic, and they're more efficient. And we've got research activities going on in that area. And then the final part, the final problem is the disastrous carbon footprint that AI has. Sam Altman boasts that for every prompt you send up to ChatGPT, it consumes 3 or 4 bottles of water. That's just absolutely brain dead. You could bring that AI, our solution is bringing AI down from the clouds to run at the edge in a distributed peer-to-peer fabric, which is stitched together with all of our computers. There's enough unutilized compute capacity just lying idle in our homes, in corporations as well. You can imagine a corporation setting up a private swarm of all of its employees' computers, and that's a greener solution. It's also a safer solution. They're not surrendering their data. And so we've shown that you can actually run a large language model, one that wouldn't fit in any single node, but you can run it across a collection of nodes where each node is computing a part of the model. And so those are the areas: safer, faster, greener, and we're working on those research points.
That's very interesting, and about the amount of water that any AI consumes. So, according to you, if we are successful in the technology that you're working on, we would not need data centers and to use other people's cloud, and we can have it on our own.
Yeah, I think there'll be an alternate. I think data centers will always be there, but I think it's also important to provide a digital public infrastructure, a viable alternate that allows people to have a better distribution of the compute load across the electrical grid, rather than concentrating it in a few data centers. It makes the entire system very brittle and very susceptible to failure. If one of those data centers goes down, we've seen it already. You know, when data centers go down, it takes out the economy. It takes out the working of several companies for days, and that's happened in a number of occasions. And so just an attempt to make the system less fragile and increase the robustness of the system. And we can do that through decentralization.
Great, great. That's very interesting point. Now, you have also spoken about AI becoming too centralized in the hands of a few large companies. Now, how can decentralized AI create safer, greener, and more inclusive technology future?
Well, this is yeah, one of the big contentions. One of the big um, pain points, not only of the industry, but it's of the entire economy. The US economy has not been this monopolized since a century ago, since the 1920s. And yes, we saw a boom of the stock market in the 1920s. We saw, maybe a dozen companies controlling the entire economy. And well, we all know we don't have to be historians to know what happened at the end of the 1920s. So here we are, a century later, apparently not having learnt the lessons, the painful lessons that the whole planet went through a century ago. Well, we did learn them, and then we unlearned them. We put regulation in place to arrest the monopoly, to cure this sort of hyper concentration of wealth and power, and to make sure that the economy was more robust. And those regulations have been systematically dismantled over the last 30 years. And now we've got a dangerously deregulated environment. And one of the mantras I have that I make to the organization is that we can't rely on government to protect us from the excesses of big tech. There's no cavalry coming. You are the cavalry. And so it's important for us to form a volunteer movement. And the industry has done this in the past. I was inspired 30 years ago by Linus Torvalds when he created Linux. And he did that in response to the monopolization of the server operating system space. And now Linux is the dominant operating system, and the industry is healthier for it. And on top of Linux, there exists a $1 trillion for-profit industry. I mean, the cloud runs on Linux. So it has been done in the past, and it can be done again. We can, at a grassroots level, transform the industry. We don't actually require the government to intervene in a top-down way. It moves too slowly. It won't be able to adjust at the speed at which AI is being developed.
I totally agree with you, and I hope that we all are successful in this advent. Now, as a
Mm.
founder with two exits to Google, what were the biggest lessons you learned about building technology companies that are both innovative and acquisition worthy? This is something that even I want to know. Now, I'm building two tech companies, and how do you really reach to that level that you can sell off your company and take it forward?
Well, the interesting thing is both Zya and Widevine were actually commercial failures. Um, they were commercial failures because they were ahead of their time. They were absolutely brilliant collections of engineers and talent and visionaries. And the the ideas are now starting, to gain relevance, but at the time it was just way too soon in both cases. So Widevine, in 2000, predicted that television will move from radio frequency transmissions, it'll move from satellite, it'll move from terrestrial cabling to internet streaming. That was in 2000. And it took 2 decades for that to happen. Of course, startups don't have 2 decades. They take in investment, and the investors expect them to turn things around and show the traction in 2 or 3 years. And so, um, if, but the important thing, in fact, the important role of the CTO is to make sure that all of that smartness is captured into valuable assets that become um, acquisition worthy for someone that can take the longer view. So that's why you said, you've got 24 patents. It's actually in the World Patent Office, there's 75 patents. So in the US, 24, 25 patents. In the World Patent Office, 75. That that sort of patenting activity was very important because we knew, okay, if we are too soon, we're not relying just on the commercial success of the startup. We're relying on being able to sell this on to someone that has got a longer horizon, a further horizon than our startup. So in both cases, in the case of Widevine, Google acquired it after 10 years of a journey. And then Zya, which was a music creation startup, which was actually generative AI before the term generative AI was coined. It was a way of creating music in a fun sort of way. But it was a commercial failure in its time. However, we did create maybe a dozen patents out of it. And Google found value in that and they acquired that. So even though you're a commercial failure, you've encapsulated the intellectual property that you've been working on and packaged it in a purchasable way that somebody else can take on. And then the employees of both those companies became Google employees. So it wasn't just, okay, just a selling off of the furniture. This was a responsible transition, and they all became Google employees. So I think it's a viable transition. If you're looking at one of these oligarchs and you're looking at them as your potential acquirer, that's a reasonable strategy. At least it worked. It worked 10 or 20 years ago. I don't know what the landscape looks like now.
Did you bootstrap for 10 years?
They were, with Widevine, it was funded in the at the end of the dot-com era. Um, with Zya, it was funded after the big mortgage crash. So it's interesting that startups are not easy to fund in when the stock market's booming. You're actually waiting for a stock market crash. This is a horrible way of looking at things, but here's the nature of capital is it goes to the place of maximum return and reliable return. So if the stock market is giving you 10, 15% return, then why go and take that money and go and put it in a highly risky equity? And so, but when the market does take a downturn, then capital looks at other places to go. So, if you're one of those that are saying that we're in the middle of a hype cycle, we're in the middle of a boom, an AI boom bubble that's going to bust, then you can see there's going to be a funding opportunity coming down the road. I don't know. It seems to be going on. There are other predictors that say no, it's going to go on. It's got a lot more. There's a lot more runway and a lot more growth. I'm not going to make those predictions. All I know is that I'm running a non-profit at the moment, that is so different to the mentality of the for-profit. A non-profit can take a long view, can take a 20, 30-year view. When you've got no payroll to fund, then that's a superpower. When your resources, your 1,000 volunteers are doing it because they are compelled by the mission, and you're getting their tired hours and their time between jobs, that's a superpower. That's a superpower that nonprofits have over for-profit entities. So I think we're in a good place.
Yeah, indeed. So now, after you had the two exits, what changed personally and professionally, and in the way that you think about scale and impact for ventures?
Um, one of the cynical lessons that I learned was that a startup idea is never proven wrong until it runs out of money. So, in the case of Zya, the hypothesis was that all music consumers are really frustrated performers and or composers. And it took $50 million worth of investment to be spent and completely depleted to prove that hypothesis wrong. That no, there's a large number of people who just want to consume the music, who don't have the skill or the tenacity to master an instrument. And we thought, oh well, we can make that part, we can take that pain away. It's it's difficult to take that pain away. There's some people in the world who just want to consume. Um, so in terms of scale, I don't think I've been very good at making consumer facing technology. However, that seems to be where, where I've been focused a lot. Um, and even now, when we are building the technology for Kwaai, this peer-to-peer infrastructure, um, I focus more on the core mathematical problems that no one else has solved, and that's where I gravitate. And the user interface is, something that someone else can do better. However, if you look at what took off, or how AI took off in the imagination of the entire planet, it wasn't the core algorithms that are inside ChatGPT. It was the user interface. It was a simple
Yeah.
chat interface. And once they did that and they presented that and anyone could use it, it just took off like a rocket. And we're I think we're still looking for that chat GPT moment for this to take off. And I'm not the one to do that. I've historically never been able to do that. We tried it with Zaya. We to some extent we tried it with Widevine, but it took other people to solve that problem. Okay, so your question, how do you scale? You just get smart people to be to be connected with smart people and listen to what they say. So, in both the cases of in all the stuff, when I was working for Lightworks in London, and we came to the US, and then that company got sold. That was a collection of really brilliant people that were reimagining how movies could be edited. The folks at Advanced Bionics who were making the cochlear implant were doing something radically new to cure deafness. And the folks at Second Sight working on curing blindness with a retinal implant. This is phenomenal work, but surround yourself with smart people and you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
You've got a better chance of not going wrong.
That's a great input. So I need to know whom I should be surrounding myself for that. Now, your your work spans award-winning innovations. Honestly, 24 US patents is not a small thing, and you have led AI transformations as well for businesses. How do you identify which technology would be temporary and which one would be future defining? Because we are in the midst of AI bubble maybe. So which ones do you think will go far and which one would not?
Uh, I I arrived at Real Networks in 2016 with an understood mission to help pivot the company. It was in decline and help develop a new technologies that would be the foundation for resurgence of the beloved brand. I didn't know what would work, but I took a gamble in 2016 on AI. It wasn't an obvious bet then. It's painfully obvious now, but in 2016, I injected AI into all of the business streams that we had. Frankly, I thought it would take hold in the video codec business that Real Networks had, but it didn't. Where it worked was in in two areas. One was in computer vision, which was a whole brand new division that we set up. We explored this area of computer vision, of how computers can look at video and make sense of it. And the specific area was, can they look at a face and understand all the things that a human can understand from a face, including face recognition, but also sentiment analysis, the determining age, gender. And when you do that, you start touching on aspects that are highly sensitive in terms of uh, the bias involved in the training data, but also the judgments that a computer is making over a human just by looking at their face. And so um, when we were doing this early on, and of course we're surrounded by smart people, we could rapidly in 2016, 2017 just game this thing out and see where it's going. Okay, so here are the um, the areas or the use cases of face recognition that we thought were aligned with human values. And here are some areas where we're not going to pursue because um, they don't align with the values of the company. Okay. And this was an important conversation that we had at a board level of Real Networks. There were board members that um, were very vocal that if we're going to go down this path of becoming world leaders in a face analytics stack, here are the areas that we're not going to pursue. And and so it's important to listen to those early um, signals of governance and human alignment. Listen to those early on and set your path rather than wait for the business to come, because when the business comes, it's very difficult to turn revenue away. And revenue can be extremely
Yeah.
distracting as well, especially if you're trying to carve a long-term path. And so ultimately, we ended up applying that technology to great success in the area of access control. So wherever you're using a badge to enter a building or gain access to some resource, you can now use your face. And there the individual is actually opting in as a convenience. In the same way that you open up your phone with your face, you're using that as a convenience rather than having to type in a password and do, two layers of authentication. And so that was one area. The other area was natural language processing. So at RealNetworks, the mobile division was in the business of routing SMS messages between carriers, and it had world-class mission-critical systems that could route billions of messages, SMS messages. And we thought, okay, we can build AI on top of that, where we look at the messages and determine whether this is spam, whether this is a phishing attack, whether this is a malicious message or a fraudulent message, or whether it's violating its tariff, where it's supposed to be on a free person-to-person tariff. It's actually a commercial message. And we found that we could do that really, really well. And we created a world-class AI natural language processing system that would run at, billions of messages a second. So these are the two divisions, AI divisions, that were created at RealNetworks. I have to say, it wasn't the only gambles. We gambled on the gaming industry. RealNetworks had a gaming division. We gambled on the codec business in China, which was in decline, sort of in its long tail. We thought that we could plow more money into that and we would be able to revitalize that. So many of the bets failed, but I think we had a better outcome than the VC industry. The VC industry says, all you need is 1 in 10 to win. I think there were 6 total bets we made at RealNetworks, and 2 were successful. And just recently, RealNetworks sold off its mobile division to TransUnion. So one measure of success was Rob Glazer was able to take the company private. And on the strength of that, I was able to retire. But since then, he sold off the mobile division. So there's the computer vision system still left. Yeah.
So
That
if
was a
I can,
rambling answer. I'm sorry.
yeah, if I can put it across, it's all about the gut feeling. If you feel that this will fare well, just go ahead with your gut, and you will find out in time
Yeah. If there was a magic
on which
formula, I guess.
technology would be good.
Yeah, on which technology. I think you've got to believe in it, you individually. If you're going to be doing, you've got to believe in the technology. I have to say, I believed in a lot of different technologies that were commercial failures. Um, it's good to have many of them, to place many, many bets. That's useful. Like all of those patents, not all of them are commercially successful,
Yeah.
and but they were important ways of saying, okay, here's an idea. We're going to encapsulate that into an asset that is tradable.
Now, that's very interesting. Now, I have another question for you now. With AI rapidly transforming work, education, creativity, and governance, what should the leaders, entrepreneurs, policymakers prepare for the upcoming 5 years? Because it's just changing every
Yeah.
day. There are hundreds of tools which are coming every day. There are new policies that they may just come from top.
Yeah. Well,
So,
okay.
what is it that we all need to be prepared for?
Um, I think everyone needs to develop an opinion early on. Don't wait for policy to come down from above. Um, we need to make sure that AI is aligned with human values. Well, you can't make that determination unless you examine, well, what are my values? So each person should look inwardly and say, well, what are my values? If my value is simply to make a profit, okay, that's simple. But if your values go beyond that, if you care for your family, okay, well, we don't run our families as profit centers. So as humans, we know what it's like to run a non-profit. We do that day in, day out. Most domestic economies do not run at a profit. And so think about that and take that idea and broaden it to your company. And think about um, how to create a compelling service that is still aligned with human values. You don't need to extract the personal information from individuals. It turns out that's a huge liability. If you're running a SaaS service and you're harvesting personal information from all of your customers, that's a big liability for you because you now have created a hacker's honeypot, a place that hackers can attack once, they break it, they've got 1 million customers' personal data. So all your customers should keep their own data. Browsers are capable of retaining that information. You just need a single key, a single unique identifier to identify your customers, and that's it. Okay, so decentralize your infrastructure. It decentralizes, it removes your liability, and it means that every person is the custodian of their own data. Okay, so that's one scaling aspect, and that is also aligned with human values.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you think, okay, well, what is it I am providing? My focus now is not on the B2B or the B2C problem. It is actually the the me to be problem. I want to put individuals as the first party in the relationship with businesses. And that complete flip of the narrative has been talked about for maybe a decade, maybe 2 decades. And I think AI is the technology that could actually enable that to happen. It's a much longer story, and we talk about it quite a lot in the Kwaai community. One of our mentors, one of our gurus within the Kwaai community is a character called Doc Searles, and he's written a number of books. One's called the Intention Economy, and that is something that's inspired me. It talks about the complete flipping of the relationship between businesses and consumers, where the consumers actually are the first party in the contract, and they set the terms and conditions. That sort of transformation in our economy I think, is going to be the engine for the next massive growth in the world economy. And I'm hoping that Kwaai can be a catalyst in that.
That would be very interesting to do if the consumers would be the first people asked for what kind of policies do they need. So that's
Right.
something, yeah. Now, last question, not but not the least, for all the founders and entrepreneurs, especially, and the technologists who want to build ethical, human-centered technology. What advice would you give them on balancing innovation, responsibility, and long-term impact?
Yeah. Okay. Um, the new CTO of Mozilla, Rafi Krikorian, he was a keynote speaker at the Kwaai Summit in March, and his mantra was owners, not renters. If in the current trend in the industry is to condemn all of the customer base to become renters perpetually. And he says, no, you get more participation, you get a more vibrant economy if everyone is a part owner of the economy. And so the sort of things we've been talking about, and I've been going up on stage and talking about it, he consolidated that into a simple slogan, owners, not renters. And think about your service. Of course, most of the VCs and most of the industry says, oh, well, you need to create a SaaS service, software as a service, and you need to gather up customers that are going to be on repeat prescriptions, repeat subscriptions. It's like a prescription. You've got them on a drug, and they're forever renters of your service. That model is a tired old red ocean, and lots of people are doing it. And what you're finding is that there's a consumer rebellion against those subscriptions. And wouldn't it be better if you can create an economy where everyone was actually part owner of the infrastructure? So within QuaiNet, we say all the compute that you have at home, maybe in your office as well, that is sitting there idle. It's burning electricity because it's plugged in and the fans are spinning, but it's doing nothing. What if that could represent a passive income for you? When your computer is in its idle cycle, doing nothing, it now signals that, hey, I'm available for any job on the network. And now you've got a wallet that starts earning income. And that is a compelling argument. Okay, so now you've got everyone participating in an infrastructure and they're part owners. They've got a stake in it. And of course they want to contribute to that. And they want to figure out, well, how can I get more of that? How can I improve my availability, the reliability of it? How can I improve my connectivity to the network so my system can be a better contributor? Because by contributing, we are doing a number of things. We've come up with a greener solution. We've taken the load off the electrical grid rather than concentrating it into these few data centers. And we're all earning from it. So it's a it's a vision of a different way of looking at an infrastructure. I'll urge people to think about the business that they're going into, whether it's, I don't know, video, whether it's selling some service, and think about what would that look like if your customers were all part owners of that infrastructure. And that is a challenge. And once you start seeing the possibilities of your customers being partners and being incentivized, then you are then I think you end up with a movement rather than just simply a single oligarch being the feudal lord that is renting, that is just collecting rents. That is not as exciting as a fully participatory user base.
It's very insightful what you just said, and I hope that people who are watching and who would watch it would realize what's going on in the ecosystem. sooner or later we all will know rent versus ownership.
There you go. Right.
Uh, One last question, and then we'll close it. We are running few courses on AI and sustainability. Any particular topic that you think we should be covering in this course?
Well, at Kwaai, we also run intern programs, and we're currently running an intern program on RAG, retrieval augmented generation, but we're taking it one step further. Um, so RAG is something that's been around for a while, and we've got graph RAG, which is taking it the next stage further. We're looking at what does a knowledge base that is distributed look like? Where it's not just owned by one person, it's actually lots of different knowledges. So if you had a web of knowledge um, that you could query, where each person is maybe curating their own domain expertise in a knowledge base, and they could make that available for others to query. Okay. Some of them, you might even charge people to query. Okay, so now you've got your skill set that you own, but you're not giving that away. You're not giving the entire skill set away, but you're enabling people to query it. So what as we're building this peer-to-peer fabric, we're looking at every single application that's highly centralized and questioning what would that look like in a decentralized way. And it's not just the sum of the parts. It's actually um, a lot more powerful because you've got this massive uh, combinatorial benefit of having the wisdom of each of the node members available to query. So you're not just querying one centralized knowledge base and relying on the general knowledge of ChatGPT or the general knowledge of Claude or whatever your favorite AI is. Imagine if each of us were curating our own knowledge bases and getting reimbursed for people querying it. Okay, so when you think about that, when you think about the television application, streaming, what does that look like in a peer-to-peer fabric? All sorts of popular. What does social media look like in a peer-to-peer fabric? What are the highly centralized systems like YouTube? How does that behave in a peer-to-peer fabric? I think that's going to be the big next explosion in this me to be business, where people will be curating their own knowledge bases and their own knowledge services. And we'll be transacting knowledge services at the edge between peers. So it's a big play. We're not doing this alone. Kwaai has now become a member of the Linux Foundation. We've set up a work group, or we're setting up a work group. We've just got approval last week. We got approval to set up a work group under the Trust over IP Foundation. So this is our big next step. So your question, what should entrepreneurs be thinking about? I think they should be thinking about it differently, not the centralized SaaS services, but what does their services look like in a decentralized fabric?
That's very well said. Thank you so very much. And it has been wonderful learning. It was a like 1 hour learning session, crash course on everything on networks and on technology and how things are functioning internally, which is not visible to us, but is very much happening. So, really, we are very grateful to all the insights that you've shared. Any final words or thoughts or message that we all would remember?
Well, are you following the World Cup? I'm
I'm
excited
waiting for
about
Austria versus
do you
Argentina.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, it's interesting. The World Cup is a great demonstration of the world coming together, and I'm just enjoying it. And I was disappointed that Bafana had such a poor showing. I'm not sure they're going to make it out of the the group stage into the knockout stage. But the of course, you can always root for England. It's amazing that these and then Messi, oh my word, 3 goals. I was so excited about that. So look, my final word is yes, you can get completely immersed in the work of your business, but take some time out to have some fun as well.
Yes, let's go and watch some Messi magic.